will. And today is Monday. Let me turn off my air conditioning. Today is Monday, and it is when they do the color of the week, 75% off. So I like to come and check it out to see if I can find any good deals for decorating the house. Like you guys know, I'm doing everything on a budget, but I still have a certain aesthetic, and so you kind of have to be patient and keep going and looking until you find everything you need. So I'm gonna show you guys what I find. The first item that I found is this cute little wooden stool. It's really loose, and all it needs is for it to be screwed in, and it will be just fine. It's a really good condition. It's wood. So next we have this wooden bowl. It's in really rough shape, but all it needs is a good sanding again and probably a good oil, and then it will be like new. And then I have this really rustic cutting board. It's uneven, but I think that kind of adds to the character of it, so I liked it and I picked it up. Next I have this little bamboo caddy. It looks like somebody must have soaked it in water because it's a little dull. I'm gonna sand it. I thought about rehydrating it with just oil, but I think I'm gonna paint it and stamp it instead. I have a couple of rolling pins, so I'll get sanding again. I'm gonna put a before picture for this one here because I've already painted it and stenciled it, and so now we just need some distressing and then to be sealed. And then finally, my favorite pick is this cool basket. Wicker and rattan and baskets and all of that stuff, it's back in trend, so I picked this one up. Once I'm done cleaning it, I have a good idea for this, guys. So the very first thing we're gonna do is that we are going to sand everything. Whenever I buy little projects, I like to pile them up until I'm ready to work on all of them at once, or like a good batch, so I can do all the sanding at once, all the painting, all the staining all at once, so I don't have to bring out all the materials and then put them back up and continue to do that. So I like to batch my items per se. Sanding everything, the bowl needed to be sanded, and then unscrewed the legs because they were a little bit loose, and sanded everything real well.
Saying we're fine, hope it's not a lie. Buckle up, take my hand, going through a little bit of turbulence. Bow your head, keep praying, looks like we're headed for a bitter end.
Surprisingly enough, I was able to sand the rolling pin. I kind of just rotated it as I went until I got all the stuff out. A lot of thrift stores, Goodwill especially, like to Sharpie things on, and whenever you have wooden stuff, it's kind of hard to get off, so you have to sand it if you want to get it completely off, and that's what I did.
Something's wrong, isn't it? This isn't just a little bit of turbulence. Bow your head, keep praying, looks like we're headed for crash landing.
Okay, so after sanding, I like to wipe everything down to get rid of the dust, and then I decided to stencil this little cutting board. It's gonna be more like a decoration piece to hang on your kitchen rather than to actually use it to cut stuff, so I don't care if I paint on it. The trick with stenciling is that you have to offload a lot of the paint and use your brush kind of dry so that you don't have bleed through underneath the stencil and you have a crisp image. You might want to tape the edges of the stencil so it doesn't move on you like it did on me, but I was being lazy. Later on, I ended up taping it anyways. While that one dried, I move on to the next piece, and this one's going to be really easy. Just paint the handles on it, and I chose this red color because it's Christmas. It's not usually my color scheme, but I'm really loving it because it does make me feel like Christmas. I put the little paper in between the cracks so I didn't have to tape off everything else, but you can do it really carefully or use a little paper like I did. Since I am using chalk paint, it dries really quickly, so I'm gonna move on and do the next step. Generally, you can do them all at once, but I did put a lot of paint on it just because I didn't want to go back, but I was really careful not to put too much, so because I didn't want it to bleed through. Don't forget to offload your paint and be very careful with it. While that dried, I moved on to the first coat on my little caddy. It's gonna be a white base all around, and usually white or light colors require multiple coats, so I worked on the first one, set it aside, and then come back and work on it later. See, while I was doing that, this guy was drying and I was able to finish the last portion of this design. So again, I'm moving on to this one. Since it dried a little bit already, I can do my second coat on it. As you can see, I am batching items, so while one is drying, I'm working on another project and then come back to the first one, and so on and so forth. That saves me time so I can finish all my projects in a couple of days or one day. You know, paint drying is the biggest part that you have to wait on, and so I like to kind of stagger them as I go. So while my paint dries, I'm going to go ahead and cut this piece of leather that we're going to use later on. I'm just going to set it aside for now, but it was just a simple piece of leather cut like a little string. And then for my favorite part of this project was my little wicker basket, and for this one I chose to do some pom-poms because I think they look super cute and they're really trendy right now. So I bought the pom-poms by the yard at the craft store at Joann's. Actually, these are actually a little pricey compared to, I guess, ribbon or all the other stuff that you can buy. I think it was $9.99 per yard or $12.99, something like that. But you can always use a coupon, so I bought 2 yards because it was all they had left. I didn't think I was gonna need it, but I figured I'd use it on a different project. So very carefully I used my glue gun and glued a couple inches at a time, and then glue it, kind of put some pressure on it, and then once it was cool a little bit, I applied some more and did that through the whole circumference of the basket. And this is what it looks like. So cute. That was the easiest one and the most fun and impactful one. Okay, now that my paint is dry on this one, I'm gonna go ahead and stamp it again. This time I'm gonna use black paint, and again, same thing, offload it on my lid and then make sure that I hold the stencil in place and go ahead and stencil. And I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but I am using JRV Stencils. If you are local to Houston or the Fort Bend County area, I sell them at my shop. You can buy them from me. Otherwise, you can order them online. So I let my projects dry overnight, and now that they're all dry, I'm going to go ahead and put some butcher oil onto my cutting board. The oil will serve as a sealer, and it also will revive the wood since it's a little dry and dehydrated. But look how beautiful it looks once you put the oil on. I did the same with my rolling pins. It's food safe, so people can still use them, and the paint will cure, and then the oil will serve as a sealer too and protect the paint as well.
I called and you didn't answer. Were you always so goddamn cold?
So I hadn't sanded the inside, and I went ahead and grabbed some sanding paper and just lightly sanded to get rid of any like scuff marks or anything that looked ugly. I had already washed it, so don't worry about that. You wash yours if you have any, but yeah, sanding is important before oiling. And then for the top of my little stool that I had found, I was gonna stencil something on top, but I decided that it looked really clean and classy as it was, and so I went with wax rather than oil on this one because I wanted the wax to harden over time and to have like a natural wear when it starts wearing off. And so this will cure and harden after 30 days. So you want to buff it in and then wipe off the excess and let it cure. And before I applied the wax to this one as well as a sealer, I wanted to distress it a little bit to give it that farmhousey look, since it already has a little piggy farm animal. Distressing the edges gives it a little worn, love, distress effect, farmhousey kind of stuff. So that's what I'm doing right here, and then I'm going to move on to waxing it to protect it as well. You'll be able to wipe it down, it's just not an item that you would wash.
Something's wrong, isn't it? This isn't just a little bit of turbulence. Bow your head and keep praying. Looks like we're headed.
So all I have to do for the stool is put it back together. I cleaned the legs with alcohol, and then I'm just going to flip it around and put the screws back in. That's all I needed, a good cleaning, and then the top of it was a little scuffed up, and so a good sanding and resealing would do the trick for that. That was super easy. Just put the screws back in, and it was all sturdy and ready to go.
Crash landing.
And I'm gonna grab my little piece of leather that I cut. You can have leather string from the craft store, but I already had this laying around. So I'm gonna make a little handle for my cutting board so that you can hook it on a nail whenever you're ready to decorate your kitchen. I don't know why, but this one turned out so cute in my opinion. It's so simple and so easy, but I love how it turned out. Very rustic, but the leather gives it like a sophisticated look. And then finally for this guy, I had showed you that I had already painted it, but I ended up distressing it with the orbital sander because it was quick and easy, but then I waxed it to seal it. And at the end of waxing it, I didn't like how the new pine looked really yellow underneath. So I grabbed my dark wax and I started applying it to the distressed parts to give it a little bit of age. And it worked out really well. So now it looks a little bit more distressed, more rustic, and that is the look I was going for. And that was the final step, guys. Let me show you how everything turned out. It is so cute. Of course, this is a white background and a lot of lighting, so they are a little bit more vivid, but look at the difference. They look all dull and tired before, and now they look so good. I hope y'all enjoyed it. We'll see you next time.